One of the most unsettling realities about dealing with a narcissist is this. Many of them only truly appreciate your value after they have completely lost all access to you. And the longer you commit to staying silent, the more their mind starts reacting in ways they never anticipated or expected. Today, we are going to dive deep into what actually occurs inside the mind of a narcissist after you have maintained long-term no contact. If this message is helping you understand the complex dynamics of narcissistic behavior on a much deeper level, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your own personal experience in the comment section below. Your story might be the exact thing that helps someone else finally understand what they have been living through. Long-term no contact effectively removes something that narcissists quietly rely on far more than most people ever realize. They depend on emotional control. This control is not always obvious or blatant. It is not always manifested through loud arguments, overt manipulation, or dramatic outbursts. Sometimes it exists in much smaller, subtle ways. It is the quiet knowledge that they can send you a message at any time and receive a response. It is the belief that your emotions still revolve around them, or the conviction that they still occupy space in your mind, regardless of how distant they may have become. That level of emotional access provides them with a profound sense of power and stability. They may ignore you, treat you with disrespect, disappear for weeks at a time, or act completely emotionally unavailable. Yet they still feel secure simply because they are convinced they can return whenever they please and still affect you emotionally. Long-term no contact interrupts that belief system completely. When you stop responding, stop checking in on them, stop reacting to their bait, and truly begin to emotionally detach, the narcissist loses the ability to predict your behavior. They no longer know what you are feeling, whether you still care about them, or whether they still hold any significance in your life. This uncertainty creates immense discomfort because narcissistic personalities frequently rely on maintaining control to protect their fragile ego. Your silence becomes concrete evidence that they are no longer influencing your emotions the way they once did. That loss of control can trigger a variety of different reactions. Some individuals become visibly angry. Some suddenly become overly affectionate. And some resort to indirect methods to try to regain your attention. But underneath many of these varied reactions lies the exact same core issue. They are struggling with the difficult realization that your emotional world may no longer revolve around them. Silence creates profound insecurity and confusion in narcissists because silence removes the specific information they normally use to feel emotionally powerful. Narcissistic personalities often depend on your reactions to measure their level of importance in your life. Whether that reaction is love, anger, sadness, frustration, or desperation, it still reassures them that they possess emotional influence over you. As long as they can trigger your emotions, they feel connected to a sense of control. But long-term no contact removes those emotional signals entirely. When you become silent, they are left without any answers. They do not know if you still miss them, if you are currently in the process of healing, if you have finally found peace without them, or if someone else has successfully replaced them in your life. That uncertainty becomes psychologically uncomfortable because narcissists often struggle immensely with situations they cannot manage or predict. They may begin overthinking your silence, even if they pretend that they do not care when you are watching. The lack of access creates a gap that their mind constantly struggles to fill. This confusion can slowly but surely turn into deep-seated insecurity. A narcissist who once felt entirely confident in their influence over you may suddenly begin to question whether they ever actually mattered to you at all. Your silence directly challenges the idealized image they created about themselves. Many narcissists operate under the belief that people will remain emotionally attached to them forever. So, long-term no contact directly threatens that core belief. That is precisely why some of them eventually return with sudden messages, emotionally charged behavior, displays of fake concern, or various indirect attempts to capture your attention once again. Silence forces them to confront a reality that they are not emotionally prepared to handle. You may no longer be an emotionally available resource for them to control. Many narcissists react with fake indifference at first because protecting their public image is extremely important to them. When someone cuts off all contact, especially after being involved in an emotionally intense relationship, the narcissist often feels the loss almost immediately. But instead of openly expressing their hurt, their confusion, or their own emotional vulnerability, they choose to hide those feelings behind a mask of coldness, false confidence, or complete emotional detachment. They want to appear totally unaffected because admitting that they have been emotionally impacted can feel like a sign of weakness to them. This is the reason why some narcissists suddenly act happier than ever right after no contact begins. They may post constantly on social media, show off new relationships, act in an overly confident manner, or behave as though your absence has not changed their life in the slightest. On the surface, it can look like they have moved on instantly. But in many cases, this behavior is more about maintaining control over how they are perceived by others than achieving any kind of genuine emotional peace. They want the people around them, and sometimes even themselves, to believe they are completely unbothered. Fake indifference also becomes a calculated psychological strategy. If they appear unaffected, they believe it may trigger you emotionally. They may expect you to feel rejected, jealous, insecure, or tempted to reach out and reconnect. Narcissists often understand how to manipulate emotional reactions very well. Therefore, appearing emotionally cold can become another tool for trying to regain power without having to directly ask for your attention. But true indifference usually looks calm and stable. Fake indifference, on the other hand, often feels exaggerated, performative, and emotionally loud underneath the surface. The more aggressively someone tries to prove to the world that they do not care, the more likely it is that your silence is affecting them far more than they would ever want anyone to know. Many narcissists return through hoovering, feigned guilt, or sudden displays of affection because losing emotional access feels deeply threatening to them. When long-term no contact continues, they often begin the difficult realization that they can no longer control your emotions, predict your reactions, or rely on your availability. That loss of influence creates significant discomfort, especially if they genuinely believed that you would always remain emotionally tethered to them. Instead of accepting the separation in a peaceful way, some narcissists try to pull you back into emotional contact again. This is where the process of hoovering begins. Hoovering is essentially when a narcissist attempts to re-enter your life after a period of distance or silence, often using specific emotional tactics designed to reopen the lines of communication. Sometimes the approach looks soft and caring. They may suddenly offer an apology, express deep regret, say they miss you, or act in an emotionally vulnerable way that they never displayed before. Other times they use guilt by reminding you of shared memories, painful moments from the past, or sacrifices they claim they made for your benefit. They may reach out during emotionally charged dates like birthdays, anniversaries, or holidays because they know that those moments can potentially weaken your emotional boundaries. Sudden affection is also a very common tactic. A narcissist who once acted distant or cold may suddenly become intensely loving, attentive, or emotionally expressive. This dramatic shift can be very confusing for people because it feels like a genuine change in character. But in many situations, the affection is connected far more to the goal of regaining access than to the goal of building a healthy relationship. Once emotional control is reestablished, the old patterns of behavior often slowly return as well. The goal is frequently the same underneath all of these varied behaviors. They are looking to restore their emotional influence and confirm that they still possess the ability to affect your emotions whenever they choose to do so. Many narcissists stalk indirectly through social media or through mutual acquaintances because even after long-term no contact, they still crave emotional awareness and psychological access to your life. Direct communication may stop, but their curiosity often does not. Narcissistic personalities struggle immensely with the idea of losing control completely. Therefore, they may search for indirect ways to monitor your emotions, your healing process, your new relationships, or your personal growth, without ever openly admitting that they are still focused on you. Social media becomes one of the easiest tools for this type of behavior. Some narcissists repeatedly view your profiles, watch your stories, like old posts unexpectedly, or appear to be online around the exact same times that you are active. Others may use fake accounts or anonymous profiles to quietly observe your life while pretending that they have completely moved on. This behavior is almost always driven by a desperate need to measure whether they still exert any emotional effect on you. They may look for any signs of sadness, loneliness, anger, or continued attachment because it reassures them that they still occupy significant emotional space in your mind. Mutual friends or family members can also become indirect sources of information. A narcissist may casually ask about you, bring up your name in a conversation unexpectedly, or try to gather specific details about your current life while pretending that it means absolutely nothing to them. Sometimes they do this in very subtle ways, so they can maintain an image of total indifference while still staying emotionally connected behind the scenes. What makes this behavior so important to understand is that it often has far less to do with actual love and much more to do with unresolved control. They may not miss the relationship in a healthy, loving, or emotional sense. Instead, they struggle with the uncomfortable idea that your life may be continuing in a peaceful way without their influence, their attention, or their emotional presence. Losing access hurts a narcissist's ego far more than the actual breakup itself ever did. This is because for many narcissistic personalities, relationships are deeply connected to a sense of validation, control, and personal identity. The relationship is not always experienced as an equal emotional bond between two people. Instead, it can become a primary source of attention, admiration, reassurance, and ongoing emotional influence that they feel entitled to maintain forever. As long as they have access to you, they feel a sense of psychological security in knowing that they still matter in your emotional world. Even when that attention is negative or unhealthy, it can still satisfy their need because it confirms that they are still important to you. When no contact becomes a long and consistent pattern, that sense of importance begins to crumble. The narcissist is no longer receiving the emotional reactions they crave. They are no longer getting updates about your life, and they no longer have any proof that you are still emotionally tethered to them. This creates what many people experience as a genuine ego injury. The pain they feel often comes less from the loss of genuine intimacy and more from the loss of their feeling of power, relevance, and emotional influence over another person. That is exactly why some narcissists react so strongly even after they were the ones who acted distant, dismissive, or emotionally harmful throughout the duration of the relationship. They may suddenly become obsessed with the idea of reconnecting once they realize that you are no longer available to them emotionally. Your silence forces them to confront something that their ego desperately resists accepting. They may no longer possess the ability to affect you in the way they once did. For narcissistic personalities, this can feel incredibly unsettling because their self-worth is often quite fragile, regardless of the confidence they attempt to display to the outside world. Losing emotional access removes one of the primary mirrors they used to validate their own existence. Sometimes the realization that you are truly moving forward becomes more painful to their ego than the actual ending of the relationship itself. Some narcissists become visibly angry because they can no longer manipulate your reactions, and that loss of emotional influence can feel deeply frustrating for them. Narcissistic personalities often rely on these reactions to maintain a sense of control in their relationships. Whether they create affection, guilt, fear, confusion, or emotional chaos, the reaction itself reassures them that they still have power over the emotional atmosphere between you. As long as they can make you respond, explain yourself, defend your actions, chase after them, or become emotionally overwhelmed, they feel psychologically connected to a position of control. Long-term no contact interrupts that cycle completely. Your silence removes the consistent emotional feedback they have become accustomed to receiving. Suddenly, their messages may go completely unanswered. Their various attempts to provoke an emotion no longer work. Their guilt tactics, dramatic outbursts, or attention-seeking behaviors stop producing the effect they want. For some narcissists, this creates intense frustration because they are no longer the ones controlling the emotional direction of the relationship. That frustration can eventually escalate into anger. Some may send hostile messages, spread rumors, act in a passive-aggressive manner, or try to damage your reputation socially. Others may become cold, mocking, or dismissive in a desperate attempt to provoke any reaction at all. The anger usually stems from their wounded pride much more than it does from any genuine sense of heartbreak. Your emotional detachment directly challenges the core belief that they can always regain access to you whenever they choose. What makes this reaction so important to understand is that your new sense of calmness becomes emotionally unfamiliar to them. Narcissists are often much more comfortable with emotional intensity than they are with emotional distance. Arguments and drama still keep the connection alive in their minds, whereas silence does not. And when they finally realize that they can no longer manipulate your emotions the way they once could, that loss of control can trigger visible resentment and aggressive anger. True no contact eventually changes your own confidence. Narcissists often notice that shift because genuine emotional detachment changes the entire energy you carry as a person. In the beginning, many people enter into no contact while still emotionally struggling. They may still feel anxious, deeply hurt, confused, or attached. But as time passes and the distance becomes consistent, something much deeper begins to occur. Your emotional dependency slowly starts to weaken. The constant need for validation, for further explanations, or for some kind of emotional closure begins to fade away. With that newfound emotional freedom comes a different kind of confidence. This confidence is not loud, nor is it arrogant. It often manifests as a deep, steady calmness, emotional stability, stronger personal boundaries, and much less emotional reactivity to the things happening around you. You stop centering your entire life around the narcissist's moods, their attention, or their approval. You begin the process of rebuilding your identity outside of the relationship dynamic that once consumed so much of your emotional energy. That internal shift becomes noticeable even from a distance. Narcissists are often highly sensitive to changes in emotional availability. They can easily sense when someone no longer reacts the same way, no longer chases them, or no longer seeks emotional reassurance from them. Your independence quietly communicates that their influence over you is fading. For narcissistic personalities who once relied on emotional control to feel stable, that realization can feel incredibly unsettling. This is why some narcissists suddenly reappear once you have genuinely begun moving forward. They may become curious, nostalgic, affectionate, or emotionally reactive after sensing your personal growth. But the most important thing for you to understand is this: your confidence did not come from making them jealous or from proving your worth to them. It came from reconnecting with yourself after spending far too much time emotionally trapped inside someone else's control. In the end, long-term no contact is not really about making a narcissist suffer. It is about breaking a toxic cycle that kept your emotions tied to someone else's control. That is the main reason why narcissists often react so strongly to your silence. Your silence removes their access to you. It removes their sense of certainty. It removes the emotional reactions they once depended on to feel powerful, important, or emotionally secure. Some of them will respond with fake indifference. Some will return with sudden affection, manufactured guilt, or complex manipulation. Others will become angry, obsessive, or quietly watch your life from a distance. But underneath many of these reactions lies the same uncomfortable truth. They are struggling with the difficult realization that they no longer control your emotional world. While they are busy reacting to their loss of influence, something much more important is happening inside of you. You are healing. You are rebuilding your confidence. You are learning that peace feels completely different when your emotions are no longer controlled by someone else's behavior. That is the true purpose of no contact. It is not about revenge. It is not about seeking external validation, and it is certainly not about trying to make someone chase you. Real no contact is about finding your emotional freedom. It is about finally becoming strong enough to stop explaining your worth to people who only ever valued access to you when it benefited them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can ever do is simply and quietly move forward without ever needing them to finally understand what it is they lost.